You know what I find genuinely fascinating about power? Not the loud kind, not the kind that announces itself with titles and status symbols and the kind of confidence that requires an audience to exist. I mean the quiet kind. The kind that operates without permission. The kind that does not know it is power because it has never needed to think about itself that way. I want to tell you about my friend Octavia. And I want to tell you about the most interesting dinner party I have ever attended in my life. Octavia is one of those people who genuinely does not think of herself as particularly powerful. She is warm. She is funny. She has this quality of paying full attention to whoever she is talking to that makes people feel genuinely seen in a way that is increasingly rare. She does not walk into rooms and command them. She walks into rooms and just quietly becomes the gravitational center of them without trying or noticing. At this dinner party, there was a man named Crispin. And Crispin had a very specific self-image. He was successful, he was charming, he was the kind of person who was used to being the most interesting person in any given room, and he knew it, and it showed, and generally people confirmed it for him, so the whole system sustained itself very comfortably. And then Octavia walked in. Not dramatically. She just arrived, said hello to the people she knew. And within about 40 minutes, the entire dynamic of the room had shifted in a way that was almost visible. The conversations that had been orbiting Crispin started drifting in her direction, not because she was performing, because she was just fully, completely, effortlessly herself. And herself turned out to be magnetic in a way that Crispin's polished performance could not compete with. Now here is the part I want you to really hear, because I watched Crispin for the rest of that evening. And what I saw on his face was not simple jealousy. It was not straightforward envy. It was something more complicated and more interesting than that. It was the specific expression of a man who had just encountered something he did not know how to process, who was sitting with the unprecedented experience of being outshone not by someone trying to outshine him, but by someone who did not even appear to be aware that a competition was happening. Because that is the thing about Octavia's kind of power. It does not compete. It does not need to. And for someone like Crispin, whose entire self-concept depended on winning the room, encountering someone who was not playing the game he had been winning for decades was deeply, specifically, personally destabilizing in a way he clearly did not know how to handle. On the way home, I thought about that look on his face for the entire drive. And what I eventually landed on was this. The most disorienting thing you can do to someone who has built their identity around being powerful is to make them feel powerless without even trying, without aggression, without competition, without a single deliberate move, just by existing in your full authentic self in their vicinity. That is not something people recover from quickly. That is the kind of thing that lodges. That is this reading. That is what you did. Let us see what the cards have to say about exactly how and exactly why it is eating this person alive. Card 1, the Emperor, reversed. Their whole identity was built on control, and you broke it right. Right, right, right. The Emperor reversed drops in first, and I need you to understand what this card is saying in the context of this specific reading, because it is everything. The Emperor upright is structure, authority, control over the environment, over outcomes, over how things go, and in what order and according to whose terms. The Emperor upright is someone who has built a very specific kind of world around themselves, a world where they are the authority, where their influence determines outcomes, where their sense of self is deeply tied to their capacity to manage what happens around them. And for a long time, maybe a very long time, it has worked. People have responded to them the way the emperor expects people to respond. The world has largely cooperated with the picture the emperor has of how things should go. Reversed, something refused to cooperate. Someone refused to cooperate. And the refusal was not even deliberate. That is what makes the emperor reversed in this reading so specific and so potent. You did not set out to dismantle this person's control. You were not running a campaign against their authority. You simply did not organize yourself around their expectations the way everyone else had been doing. And the not organizing the simple, authentic, completely uncontrived refusal to fall into the pattern they were used to producing broke something in their operating system that they do not know how to fix. Here is the practical example for this card. There is a man named Dominic. And Dominic had a very particular pattern in his relationships, professional and personal, both. He was the one who set the pace. He was the one who determined the terms. He was the one who decided when things moved forward and when they did not, and what the temperature of any given dynamic was going to be. And people accepted these terms because Dominic was skilled and charming, and because his self-assurance had a quality of solidity that made it easier to let him lead than to establish an alternative arrangement. And then he encountered someone who simply did not receive his terms. Not confrontationally, not with a counteroffer or a negotiation. Just the terms landed and did not produce the expected compliance. Dominic would set a pace, and this person would have their own pace that had nothing to do with his. Dominic would establish a temperature, and this person's temperature was entirely self-determined and showed no evidence of being influenced by his. Dominic would make moves that had always produced specific responses, and the specific responses did not come. It drove him to the edge of his mind. Because his entire framework for understanding his own power was built on the evidence of other people's response to it. And here was someone whose response was simply themselves. Not resistance, not rebellion, just themselves. And you cannot argue with someone being themselves. You cannot outmaneuver someone who is not playing the game. You cannot maintain a sense of authority over someone who is not acknowledging that you have any. That is your emperor reversed. You walked into this person's carefully constructed world of managed outcomes and simply existed without accepting the terms of the management. And the whole structure shuddered. Card 2, the tower, the self-concept that took years to build, cracked in your presence. Woe. The tower comes in second, and honestly, the sequencing of these first two cards is so specific that Spirit is basically narrating exactly what happened when you showed up in this person's life. The Emperor reversed told us about the control system. The tower is telling us what happened to that control system when it encountered something it could not manage. The tower does not fall because of gradual wear. It does not decline slowly. It cracks suddenly, in a moment. When the specific force arrives that the specific structure was never built to withstand, and what you represented for this person was that specific force. Not through aggression, not through attack, through something far more effective and far more permanent, the simple truth of who you are being so undeniably itself that the performance this person had been maintaining around you became impossible to sustain. Here is the practical example for the tower. There is a woman named Marguerite, and Marguerite had built, over the course of her adult life, a very specific and very successful persona. She was the most interesting person in any room she walked into. She made sure of it, not crudely, with skill, with the kind of careful self-presentation that looks effortless because it has been practiced so long, it has become almost genuine. She knew how to read a room and position herself within it. She knew how to make the right impression on the right people at the right moments. She was, by any reasonable external measure, someone who had completely mastered the art of being compelling. And then she met someone who was compelling without art, without the careful positioning, without any apparent awareness that impressions were being managed at all. Just genuinely, natively, effortlessly compelling in a way that Marguerite could feel the difference between, even if she could not have articulated what the difference was. And what happened in Marguerite was not simple. She felt it in a way she had not felt challenged in years, because this was not a challenge she could meet on familiar ground. She could not outperform someone who was not performing. She could not out-genuine someone who was not trying to be genuine, who just was. And the tower moment for her was the moment she felt the crack in her own self-concept. The moment she understood that the thing she had been building and maintaining and perfecting for years was a construction. And that constructions, no matter how skilled, have a specific kind of vulnerability to things that are simply real. Your tower card in this reading is saying that crack happened for this person. Something in the picture they held of themselves fractured in your presence in a way they have not been able to repair. And they hate that. They hate it with a specific and personal intensity. Because the crack happened not because they were attacked, but because they were simply near someone whose realness made the construction visible in a way it had never been visible before. Card 3, 5 of Wands, reversed the internal war they are fighting because of you. 5 of Wands reversed comes in third, and this card is giving me very specific information about what has been happening inside this person since you did what nobody else could. The 5 of Wands upright is conflict. External conflict. The scramble and the competition and the fighting for position that happens when multiple forces are in the same space and none of them are yielding. Reversed, that conflict has turned inward. The scramble is happening inside this person now. They are at war with themselves over you, over what you represent, over what your impact on them means, over how to feel about the fact that they feel what they feel. Because here is the specific internal war that makes the 5 of Wands reversed so telling in this reading. On one side of the conflict is their ego, the part of them that has a very clear and well-defended position about who they are and what they are capable of and what their relationship to power and control and other people's influence over them looks like. That part is furious. That part is generating the hate in your title, the hating that you did what nobody else could, the hating that they feel powerless in a way they have never felt before. But on the other side of the conflict is something else. Something that does not have the ego's vocabulary or the ego's defensiveness, but that is no less present and no less powerful. Call it recognition. Call it the part of them that knows the difference between their performance of themselves and the real thing, and that recognized in you the real thing, and that has been stirred awake by that recognition in a way that is both uncomfortable and undeniable. Practical example for the 5 of Wands reversed. Think about a man named Sylvester. And Sylvester had a whole internal architecture built around the belief that no one could get to him emotionally. Not because he was cold, because he was strategic, because he had learned through enough experience exactly how to engage with people in ways that felt deeply connecting without actually opening the places in himself where genuine connection would require vulnerability. He was brilliant at this. So brilliant that people left their time with him feeling genuinely seen, while Sylvester remained fundamentally sealed. And then someone came along who somehow, without trying, found a way past the seal. Not by attacking it, not by being more strategic, just by being in such genuine contact with their own interior that the contrast with Sylvester's sealed version of connection became suddenly and uncomfortably visible to him. And he felt it. He felt the presence of something real he had not felt in a long time. And the internal war started immediately, the part of him that wanted to stay sealed versus the part of him that had just been reminded what unsealed felt like and was not willing to go back to forgetting. That war is your Five of Wands reversed. It is happening right now. Inside someone who thought they had everything managed. And you started it simply by being who you are in their presence. Card 4, the Hanged Man, they ARE suspended in an understanding they cannot escape yes. The Hanged Man. In the 4th position. And I want to spend real time here because this card is doing something very specific in this reading. The Hanged Man is someone who has been stopped. Not by external force, by a shift in perspective so significant that the old way of moving is no longer available. They are suspended between the person they were before the shift and the person they have not yet figured out how to become after it. And what suspended them, what produced the radical perspective shift that put them in this position, was you. Let me explain what the suspension actually feels like from the inside, because I think this is important for you to understand what this person is living through. The Hanged Man is not suffering in the conventional sense. There is actually a quality of strange peace in the suspension, a forced pause that produces genuine seeing. Because you cannot look away when you are hanging. But it is also deeply disorienting because everything they understood about their life and themselves looks different from this angle. Upside down. Rearranged, and they cannot get back to the old angle because the perspective shift has been too fundamental. Practical example. There is a woman named Helena, and Helena operated for years from a very clear and very functional understanding of what she needed from relationships and what she was willing to give and where the boundaries of her emotional availability were. She had built this understanding carefully over time after experiences that had taught her expensive lessons. And the understanding served her. It kept her safe. It kept her in control of her own interior in a way she valued deeply. And then she encountered someone who produced in her a feeling she had no framework for. Not because the feeling was unprecedented in romantic history, because it was unprecedented in her history. She had not felt this specific quality of pull before. This specific combination of recognition and resonance and the terrifying sense that her carefully built framework was not equipped to process what she was feeling. And she went into the Hanged Man position suspended, unable to move forward the way she had always moved because the ground she had always stood on had shifted, unable to go backward, because you cannot unknow what you now know. Helena spent 3 months in this suspension before she could begin to figure out how to integrate it. 3 months of the Hanged Man, of seeing her own life from an angle she had never seen it from before, and not having the vocabulary or the framework yet to decide what to do with the view. That is what you put this person in. They are hanging. They are seeing themselves and their life from an angle they have never seen before because of what encountering you produced in them. And they cannot get down from the position until they integrate what they are seeing. And the integration is happening slowly because what they are integrating, the fact that someone finally got to them in a way nobody else has, is not small. It is not quick. It is going to take what it takes. Card 5, 4 of Cups reversed, they ARE, waking up to what they have and what they almost missed, 4 of Cups reversed, arriving here, And this is the card that starts to tell me something about where this is all heading. Because everything up to this point in the reading has been about the disruption, the cracked control, the tower moment, the internal war, the suspension. The Four of Cups reversed is the first card that suggests movement, orientation, the beginning of a shift towards something. The Four of Cups upright is someone sitting under a tree with their arms crossed. 3 cups are in front of them, and a 4th is being offered from a cloud, and they are not even looking at it. They are in their head, absorbed in their own interior to the point of missing what is being presented, turned away from what is available. Reversed something captures their attention. They look up. The offering that was being ignored becomes visible. And in your reading, the offering that is becoming visible is you. Or more accurately, the full reality of you. The quality of what you bring. The specific and unrepeatable thing that you represent that no one else has been able to produce for them. They have been sitting with their arms crossed in the Four of Cups position for a while, maybe protecting themselves, maybe managing their emotions around what you stirred up, maybe just in the stunned suspension of someone processing something bigger than they expected. And the reversal is the looking up, the waking up to what is actually in front of them. Practical example for the Four of Cups reversed. Picture a man named Rafferty. And Rafferty had been in a period after a significant disruption where he was genuinely not capable of full presence with anything. He was functioning, but not engaged, going through the motions with a quality of detachment that he was not doing deliberately. It was just where he was. And there was someone in his life during this period who was consistently there, not demanding his attention, not requiring him to perform presence he did not have, just genuinely there in a way that was steady and real and available when he was ready for it. And one day, not dramatically, not in a big moment, Rafferty just looked up. In the middle of an ordinary interaction with this person, he looked up from his own interior preoccupation and fully saw what was in front of him. And what he saw shocked him a little. Because it had been there the whole time. He had been sitting next to something extraordinary while his arms were crossed and his eyes were elsewhere. The Four of Cups reversed is that looking up. That sudden, clear, slightly embarrassed recognition of what was being offered and what you were almost too absorbed to receive. That is where this person is. They are looking up. The arms are uncrossing. The offering you is becoming visible to them in a way it was not fully visible before because they were too busy being disrupted to actually see. The disruption is beginning to settle into clarity. And the clarity is making them aware of what they almost missed. Card 6, the world, the understanding they are arriving at is permanent, and we close with the world. And this card, as the closing card of a reading about someone being made powerless in a way they have never experienced before, is Spirit putting something final and definitive on the table. The world is completion. It is the arrival at a place from which there is no return to the previous position. Not because the previous position was destroyed, but because the journey that has been traveled has changed the traveler fundamentally. You cannot unsee what the world shows you. You cannot unknow what you know when you are standing in the world's energy. The completion it represents is not just external, it is internal. It is a shift in understanding that has permanently updated the framework. And for this person, the permanent update is about you. Specifically, the understanding they are arriving at through all the disruption and the tower moment and the internal war and the suspension is an understanding of what you are and what you mean and what your presence in their life has done and is doing. And that understanding, once it fully arrives, is not going to be something they can manage back into a more convenient shape. Practical example for the world. There is a man named EVERRR. And EVERRR, at the end of a long and complicated process of resisting an understanding he did not want to arrive at, finally arrived at it. And the thing that struck him most in that moment of arrival was not the emotion of it, though there was emotion, but the quality of permanence. The sense that something had clicked into place that could not be unclicked. That the version of himself who had not understood this thing about this person was gone, and a version who understood it had taken his place, and there was no road back. And what he understood was not complicated. It was actually very simple. He understood that this person had done something for him that nobody else had managed to do. Had reached something in him that he had been reasonably certain was unreachable. Had made him feel things he did not fully have vocabulary for yet, and that the feeling powerless that drove the hate in your title, the specific outrage of someone who has never felt this before, feeling it for the first time, was actually not powerlessness at all. It was just what it felt like to be genuinely affected by someone for the first time in a very long time. And once EVERRR understood that once the world settled into place, the hatred of the feeling started transmuting into something else. Into recognition. Into the specific and slightly terrifying admission that what this person produced in him was not a problem to be solved. It was the most real thing that had happened to him in years. That is, the world for the person in your reading. The understanding is completing. The journey through the disruption is arriving somewhere. And where it is arriving is an honest reckoning with the fact that you did what nobody else could. And that the powerlessness they felt was not weakness. It was the first genuinely real thing they had felt in longer than they might want to admit. What spirit wants to leave you with a few final things that are coming through clearly. The first, the hate in your title is a specific and very human response to vulnerability that someone did not consent to feeling. When we feel something we did not choose to feel, especially something that disrupts our self-concept in the way this disrupted theirs. The first response is frequently resistance dressed up as contempt. They hate that you did this, not because what you did was bad, but because what you did was real, and real things require real response, and real response requires the kind of openness they have been carefully maintaining, the illusion of not needing. So the hate is actually the ego's defense against the recognition. And recognizing it as that as a defense rather than a verdict changes how it lands for you. The second, you do not need to manage how any of this makes you feel. If knowing this produces something in you, relief, validation, a complex mix of things that do not have clean names, all of that is allowed. The feelings are information. Receive them. The third, what you did for this person, the reaching of something unreachable, the making real of something that had been kept safely unreal, is a quality of yours that is not specific to this person. You carry this. You will carry it into every space you enter. It is part of who you are. And the people who are genuinely ready for it are going to be changed by it in the best possible way. This person was not fully ready, hence the powerlessness and the hate. But the capacity you demonstrated here is yours permanently. Take it with you. Fourth and final. The world ending this reading is not an accident. Something is completing in this situation whether or not it produces the outcome you might hope for or expect. The completion is in the understanding that is arriving, in the permanent shift in this person's relationship to their own vulnerability, in your own deepening understanding of what you carry and what it does. These completions matter. They are real. and they are shaping what comes next for both of you in ways that are worth paying attention to. Keep being exactly the thing that nobody else could be for them. Not for them. For you. Because that is who you are. Drop something in the comments if this landed. Subscribe so you are here for the next reading, and share this with someone who needs to know that making someone feel powerless without even trying is one of the rarest and most extraordinary forms of impact that exists.